Hi, welcome to the Dr. John Wilson Community Garden. Let me give you a little bit of history about the garden that you've joined or that you are already a member of. The garden was founded in 2004 by Dr. John Wilson. He would have been in his 80s at the time that he started this community garden. And it was originally and still is today a piece of town property that the town agreed for Dr. Wilson to have a community garden on until they decided what they wanted to do with the property. And here we are many years later, and the community has continued to show again and again that this is exactly what they want to do with this land that the town owns. The property is managed by Black Mountain Parks and Rec in cooperation with Public Services, and it includes a disc golf course, a greenway trail, donation plots that we grow food on for our partner organization, Bounty and Soul, and enough plots that over 100 gardeners rent and grow food here. Dr. Wilson's original mission when he founded the garden was that he wanted a place in our community where people could grow food for themselves. He wanted a place where he could share his lifelong education and passion for community gardening. And he also wanted a place where collectively we could grow enough food to share. So our mission still today is to grow, to educate, and to share. In addition to all the annual agriculture that you'll find on this property, we have hundreds of species of native, medicinal, pollinator, perennials on our property. So we have things like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, pawpaws, Asian and North American persimmons, North American plums, 3 different kinds of cherries. We have hardy citrus, figs, and on and on. We also have a lot of amazing natives like nettles and sochan, which is a beautiful native Cherokee green that we harvest and donate to Bounty and Soul every year. We call this section of the garden the D beds. These beds are managed entirely by volunteers, the garden manager, and interns. We receive donations from local greenhouses and seed companies to provide the starts for this section, and we grow year-round in the donation beds. We average around 4,000 to 5,000 pounds annually harvested from this section. All of our donated produce goes to Bounty and Soul, our partner nonprofit, who distributes food, education, and builds community in the Swannanoa Valley. This is the barn, predominantly used by the garden manager, volunteers, and our interns to grow food for the donation program. Welcome inside the barn. There are a lot of items in the barn, and we try to keep them as organized as possible. I would welcome you to think about our community garden like we are sharing a huge cooperative house for about 200 people. And if we don't all put things back where they belong, it makes it really aggravating and frustrating for the next person who comes along and wants to do their job. So I recommend that you read the signs that we have, and if you're in doubt, try to find a logical, kind place to put something. But ideally, you put things back where you found them. So we have over here even some sunscreen and some hand sanitizers. We have harvest knives. And gardeners, I know we can all get into our right brains, and we're not very linear thinkers when we garden. And I welcome that. However, it tends to cause us to put a tool down, go do 5 other tasks that we wander through, and then forget and leave tools hanging out in the garden in random places. Please do a thorough remembering back to what you did while you were here and collect everything that you used while you visited the garden. That includes watering cans, small things like harvest knives, or widgers, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So really, really important that you don't leave anything in your garden. That also includes 5-gallon buckets. If you would really like to have your own 5-gallon bucket in your garden plot, then I highly recommend you go to Ingalls to their icing department and ask for buckets. They regularly have them for free. But please don't walk off with the buckets that you find at the barn. We need every one of them on our volunteer work days. This tool is a widger. It's a great little tool for popping starts out of flats. You can pop either end down in here and it will pop it right out of the tray. And also you can use it for planting. I'll show you that in another video. However, they're really light and you can very easily forget and walk home with it in your pocket. So please pay attention and get it back in the little black container that says Widger. If the widgets are missing, forks also work great for popping starts out of trays and even using them to plant. Over here we also have these orange stakes and these snap clamps. And these are an example of things that aren't available for community garden use. There are a lot of items in the barn that we use expressly for growing food for donation. And these are part of our winter hoop tunnel system. So please, I don't want to find these in your personal plot. If you have them in your personal plot, please return them to the barn. Same thing with snap clamps. These break really easily. They're easy to get lost. If you need them, please buy some. You can find them on Johnny's and many places on the internet. Just look up snap clamps to get your own. Also in the barn, we have measuring tapes. Sometimes you need to re-measure your plot because the measurements have gotten out of alignment and you can no longer tell if your plot is the right dimensions. So they are here in the barn. There are 2 of them. Again, please make sure these get back in the barn. Same thing, we've got different types of mallets for hammering in bamboo or stakes. Something that goes missing often are our hammers. So please, again, be conscientious, make sure they get back in the barn. There are a variety of hand tools here you're welcome to use in your plots. We also have first aid kits in the garden. So if you have anything that happens that comes up when you're here in the garden, we do have a full first aid kit and more. And then of course there's also the fire station at the top of the hill if you have any emergencies. So you'll notice that I've got some starts down here by my feet. This is part of our 10% program and also our donation program. I'm going to talk about the 10% plot in just a moment, but where you find the starts for your 10% plot or your seeds is here in the barn. You'll find them either here on the ground or you'll find them here on these shelves. I'll oftentimes leave seeds and signage as well. In the peak of summer, we'll often plant beans. And then finally, you'll see over here the dry erase board. That's often where I will leave messages for you all regarding planting these 10% crops. We grow a lot of vegetables at the Dr. John Wilson Community Garden, and that means that we need high quality tools. I really emphasize that we use no-till or even no-dig methods here at the garden, so we disturb the soil as little as possible. It's really, really important for the health of our soil that we use proper garden techniques, and that means having high quality tools. So we invest a lot of money in our tools, and it helps if you all invest time in caretaking them. So an example of how a tool should not be returned is looking like this. Lots of mud and dirt still on the fork. So ideally, when you're done with the tool, we have buckets and scrub brushes at 2 different faucets, one by the barn and one by the shed, both places where we store tools. You dip the fork, the shovel, the whatever tool you've used into the bucket and get it nice and wet, and then use the scrub brush to scrub it clean. So you should be putting your tools away fairly clean. You don't have to necessarily eat off of them, but they're free of mud and debris. And then make sure that you store them like with like. So this is a digging fork. This is used for loosening and aerating your soil. This is a composting fork. It's for moving material. So notice the distinction between these 2 tools. This one has round tines, this one has rectangular tines, the curvature of them, very different purposes for these 2 tools. So it's also really important that you treat the tools with care. Although this is a digging fork, it is not meant for prying out rocks. Oftentimes every year I have to find a blacksmith to reset our tines on our tools because someone has put too much force on them. These tools are really, really strong, but you need to pay attention to your own strength. Make sure that you're moving your body with awareness and that you're not stressing the tools to do jobs that they weren't meant to do. In this area, we also have our trash can. So if you have trash from anything that you've done in the garden, this is where it would go. We also have bags for harvesting, so if you didn't bring your own basket or bags, you are welcome to take these. You just reach up in here into the hole and pull one out. And then if you have extra bags, you can certainly donate them. Just don't bring them if the bucket's full, take them back home, because we don't have a place to keep extra. And please don't bring your miscellaneous, I don't know what to do with this, to the community garden. We can't use your extra plant pots or your extra, I don't know what to do with it, items here at the garden. Because when you bring them to the garden, we then have to decide what to do with them. So if you think that you have something valuable for the garden, just send the garden manager an email and ask if they think that the garden could use your donation. I'm in the back left-hand corner of the barn, and I wanted to show you a couple of additional resources that you might want to use in your garden. Over here we have burlap from Dynamite Coffee Roasters. This is biodegradable, and folded up and put into your pathway, this would make a great weed barrier that would eventually biodegrade over time. So if you're really struggling with mugwort in your path, you could dig it out, sift the soil to get that rich, good, black, fertile soil and put it into your garden plot, and then lay a number of these down, layer upon layer in your plot, and then cover it with wood chips. After a few years, this will have biodegraded. The other thing you could do is cardboard. So we have donations of cardboard, and so these could also be used as weed control, and these will also biodegrade. Worms love this. And so over the years, you put the wood chips in your pathway, the cardboard and the wood chips break down and become rich soil. You dig out your pathway, sift it, use that composted pathway in your garden bed to amend it. And then finally, back here, we have scrap pieces of rime. Rime is a spun polyester fabric that works as either frost protection or shade protection. So we do have some hoops that are bent to be the right diameter for your plots, and I'll show you those in a moment. And you can use this rime. You need to get your own snap clamps, and you can put it over your plot if you're concerned that your bed, that your plants could get frosted, or if you're transplanting and you're afraid it's going to be too hot and the plants might get shocked. So you might put this on the plants for a short term. So there are scraps in here that are welcomes for anyone to use. You can also buy this on the internet if you want to have your own piece and keep it for your own uses. So I mentioned hoops that are bent to the diameter of your bed. These hoops are predominantly used in the winter for winter gardening so that you can put rime and UV grade plastic to protect your crops through the winter. However, you can also use these in the summer to provide shade protection for your crops using that scrap rime I pointed out, or rime that you purchase yourself. This is really important that you don't take the hoops that are bent for the donation beds. The donation beds are only 4 feet wide, and so you'll notice that a hoop bent for the donation plot looks pretty different. Most of our donation plot hoops do have red paint on the top, but not all of them. So I need you to pay attention to the actual diameter and width of your hoop. Do not take more than about 5 hoops per half plot or 10 for full plot. You don't need any more than 5 feet between the hoops is absolutely adequate, so you don't need a lot of these. This is also great protection for if you've put your 10% crop in and you're a little concerned that maybe the plants will be stressed by the sun or the heat. You can set up 2 of these on your 10% plot and put a scrap of rime over it to protect them. This bamboo is for use by all community gardeners. You can use it to edge your beds, to build trellises, or whatever you need in your garden plot. It is located on the south side of the barn. To orient you, the interstate is north, the river is east, that way is west, and the horse farm is south. So you're welcome to use bamboo in your plots. Please be considerate of your neighbor that you're not shading their plot too much, or talk with them about how anything you construct in your plot might affect either of your neighbors. And here we have wood chips. This is donated by local arborists in the community, and you can use as much of these as you need for maintaining your pathways on either side of your plot and at either end of your plot. We'll talk more about that when we review your plot. We do have a porta potty in the garden. It's on the southwest corner of the barn. And we have a hand washing station for you. If you find this jug empty and you feel capable of doing so, you can either carry the jug over to the water spigot and fill it up, or bring the hose over and fill it up. We appreciate everyone's help in keeping this full of water. And it is not potable water. It is water that comes from the river. Behind the barn, on the west side of the barn, we have an assortment of wire that you can use for vertical growing. Vertical gardening is a great way to maximize your growing space. So you could take bamboo or stakes and affix it to this piece of wire, and you could grow half runners, cucumbers. You could put a smaller tomato against this, or tomatillo. We also have longer or bigger pieces of wire fencing. We have cages to support peppers, and we have bigger hoops in the back. All of this is just first come, first serve. If you have cages in your own personal plot that you don't want to use, this is where they get stored. Please be conscientious about safely and sort of neatly organizing all of these cages so that people can get in here without injuring themselves to get their cage needs. So this is the C row as you're walking away from the barn. These are all rental plots. In the distance, we have the little free library, which you can bring your books from home to put into circulation into the community, and also take some great books. This is an example of a full plot. A full plot measures 6 feet by 50 feet long. The way to get a full plot is to successfully garden one season, and then you can make a request to the garden manager to expand to a full plot. Notice that the pathways are beautifully mulched. Edging of the bed is completely optional. That is up to each gardener, whether or not they want to put any edging on their bed, whether it be boards or bricks or bamboo. Make sure that your edging is within your 6 feet. You cannot take away from the 2-foot wide paths with your borders. So the outside edge of your border to the outside edge of your other border should measure 6 feet, and then you should have a minimum of 2 feet for your pathway. This is an example of a half plot. A half plot is simply a garden bed that's been split in half. So it's still a 50-foot long bed with a 5-foot 10% or donation bed at the front of the bed, and then 22.5 feet down marks the halfway point. So what you do if you're sharing your bed with another gardener is you measure 5 feet for your 10%, 22.5 feet for your plot, and 22.5 feet for your neighbor's plot. Now keep in mind, if you're in the south plot, that means your plot is on the horse side of the garden. And if you're in the north end of the bed, your plot is on the interstate side of the garden. Same thing as with a full plot, you're expected to maintain your pathways, keep them mulched and free of tools or any other obstructions. You're also encouraged to maintain the pathways at the front and the back edges of your garden. If everyone maintains the pathways in front of their beds, then we'll have free and clear, weed-free, beautifully mulched pathways between each of the rows. Here, at the front here, is this person's 10% plot. They work together with the other half plot neighbor in this plot to grow these crops for donation to Bounty and Soul. Our 10% program through our renters generates around 1,000 pounds annually, just growing in 10% of everyone's plots. It's really amazing. And so this person has done a beautiful job of forking and amending their bed and then spacing and planting their crop. It's looking really, really good. As you continue to walk away from the barn, you'll come to the B row. The B row is halfway between the barn and the shed. At the top of the B row is our invasive compost windrow. On the left-hand side here, underneath the black landscape fabric, is last year's compost windrow that is slowly decomposing under that hot black tarp. It will be ready for use sometime in June or July. To the right is this year's 2021 compost windrow. Anytime you have invasive weeds like mugwort, you add them to that pile. You don't put them in the standard compost bins. So this is what mugwort looks like. It is a bright green on the top, and then the underside of the plant has a silvery look to it. Its Latin name is Artemisia vulgaris, so common is vulgaris, and Artemisia named after the goddess of the moon for that silvery underside to the leaf. This plant is incredibly invasive in our garden. A lot of garden plots tend to have it in it. And it's really important that you use a digging fork or a hori-hori knife or some tool like that to loosen up the roots and get the roots out. Because any root that you leave behind will continue to grow more mugwort, even if it's just something as small as this. So a good way to get it out is to, if it's in your bed, is to use a sifting screen to pull it out. Mugwort is edible. It is medicinal. In fact, it would have been so valued by many of our European ancestors that women would have sown the seeds into their clothing to come to the New World so that they could have this important kitchen herb in their home and in their yards. And so you can use this just like you would parsley. You can put it with your poultry and things like that. You can use it to make vinegars by soaking in the vinegar. You can use that vinegar as a liniment for sore muscles and arthritis and achy bones. You can use it as a delicious tea. In England, mugwort would have been known as poor man's tea because it makes a delicious dark brew like a black tea, but it's incredibly medicinal for you. So I know that we see this oftentimes as this terrible weed that we have to fight in our garden beds, but I hope that you'll also look at it as potentially an ally in your health and in your home. Welcoming you to our garden is this signboard that has history and information about the community garden. And on the back side, we have our community garden guidelines. And we also have a map displayed that shows you the first names of all of our community gardeners and the plot that they're renting. It's an entire map of the garden. So you can find all of that on the back side of this sign. And then behind the sign and our sandbox and closest to our shed is the A row. The A row borders the community compost bins. This is the shed. Inside the shed, we have lockable tool storage. We have garden books and other resources for community garden use. This is especially storage for our community gardeners. On the north side of the shed is where we keep wheelbarrows. So you'll neatly pile those up, handles up, wheel down on the north side there. And then you'll notice in the distance that we have cars parked at the barn. We have room for about 3 to 5 cars if they're carefully parked over at the barn. But please do not ever pull down into the garden on this side of the garden. We have too much erosion on the hill to allow for any kind of deliveries or vehicles coming down to this side of the garden. So this is for walking path only. When you're ready to get compost for your 10% plot or your personal plot, look for the Take From Here sign. Every gardener is welcome to 2 wheelbarrows of sifted compost for their half plot or 4 for their full plot. After that, if we still have compost available, if we've gotten into the season, then the garden manager will let you know if there's more compost available. Sifting screens are available here for you to sift your compost, and we have other videos in our YouTube channel for you to watch to learn the proper techniques for sifting compost. It's really important that you make sure that you put trash in one bucket and put it in trash cans, that you take out any invasive weeds and put it up on the invasive compost pile, and that anything that's still biodegradable goes into the current Add Here pile. Do not ever put anything in any pile that says do not add. You should only take from the Take From Here pile and add to the Add Here pile. Again, check out our compost videos for more details on the importance and the techniques for composting at the garden. Let's talk how to water your crops at the community garden. This is our rainwater system that's closest to the shed. It's a gravity-fed system. There are 6 1,100-gallon barrels at the top of the hill that capture water off of the Gray Eagle Arena, and then it's gravity fed to this faucet. And this is an operation year-round. It does not have to be turned off due to freezing pipes in the winter. To turn on our water systems, you have to pull this blue handle all the way up. And then there's additional knobs or levers on the spigot as well that you'll need to look for. So in this instance, the one that we currently have on here, we have to turn this lever, and then there's also additional levers on the Y valve. Make sure that if you are watering, because there are often Y valves on all the spigots, you might not be the only person watering. So be sure to check when you turn off the blue handle that there isn't someone else who's also watering their plot. So just give a look around and check and see. Otherwise, if you're the last person to water, make sure you put the handle all the way down and then go ahead and turn off any valves on the system so that the entire system is completely shut down. Also, keep in mind to remember to return watering cans and also coil all hoses neatly at the spigots. So we have 4 river water spigots in the garden. These are on just from March to October or November so that the pipes don't freeze. And there's one located near the barn, and then the other 3 are at the back of each row. So again, you turn the handle all the way up, and then as you can see, there is a Y valve and there's a lever to turn these on. And so you have to turn the lever towards the middle in order for the hose to come on. Again, when you're done watering, go ahead and turn off the system. We have extra washers in the barn, so if you ever see water spraying out like that, that's probably because we need a washer at the location. You can let me know, or if you feel comfortable fixing it, you can fix it yourself. From compost to great soil to incredible tools and fantastic chlorine-free water, you pretty much have everything you need to garden at this community garden except for your own seeds and starts. The one exception is I recommend everyone purchase or invest their own watering wand. Watering wands are really delicate and they're easy to break, and so it's really not advisable to have one for the whole community garden. So this is one thing that you definitely want to invest in for yourself and bring with you when you come to the garden. Now, I hope when you come to water your garden bed that you don't find the hoses like this, because this is not a great way to start off your gardening experience. So be sure whenever you leave the garden or do the gardener next after you a favor, if you find the hoses looking like this, take a moment to coil them. So how do you coil a hose? You start at the part closest to the faucet. Do not start coiling it from the end. Make sure you start at the part connected to the faucet. And you begin to lay it down in a nice big circle, like so. Gently twisting the hose as you go, and it will lay beautifully flat. And oftentimes this can be quite a chore if the person before you has left it in a tangle. But if everyone takes a moment to do this, it makes life a lot easier for everyone. And it doesn't take that much time to coil a hose well. And we're almost done. And that's so much nicer. To be a member here at the Dr. John Wilson Community Garden, your main expectation is to keep your plot tended and cared for, to keep your pathways mulched and clear. But we hope that you'll want to do so much more. We hope that you want to make friends while you're here and get to know your neighbors. And we also hope that you at some point would like to volunteer. There are so many ways to get involved. Community is really the most important word in community gardening. So if you want to get involved, reach out to the garden manager. From fundraising to taking pictures and posting them on social media, to creating videos like this one, to planting starts in the garden, you name it, we have a project or a place of value for you. Get invested in the community garden.